Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Virtual Lab series of video blog presentations on various diverse scientific computing topics. As you can see here, the title of today's presentation is on the topic of predicting the high pressure and temperature phase diagrams of materials such as iron for geophysical applications, using first principles computational methods such as density functional theory. Such studies can, for example, help to better understand the structure and composition of minerals and alloys under the same extreme pressure and temperature conditions found at the core of planets, such as our planet Earth. This presentation is provided by Virtual Lab, the company behind the development of the Materials Square online platform. Materials Square is entirely dedicated to assisting and encouraging researchers from across the world to perform atomistic computational simulations on a wide range of materials science and molecular chemical modeling applications, directly via our integrated powerful cloud computing resources, being entirely online-based, and executable via any basic web browser interface on any device with Internet access. The Materials Square platform makes it possible to execute such complex simulations and calculations without the need to install any complicated scientific code locally on your machine, and without the need to have expensive supercomputing clusters at your immediate disposal. Our supported atomistic simulation functionalities and solutions are mainly based on well-established scientific computational techniques such as density functional theory and classical molecular dynamics, and have a very broad range of useful applications in computational chemistry and materials science (R&D), which are thus ideally suited for both industrial and academic users from around the globe. We invite our viewers to please consult our products and services offered via the Materials Square platform by visiting its corresponding website, which is www.matsq.com, as noted also in the video description below. So, let us begin our main scientific presentation of today. High-pressure experiments, aimed at investigating the structure and composition of minerals and alloys under the same extreme conditions found inside planetary interiors, are typically very challenging to perform in the laboratory. In fact, they may even occasionally yield contradictory results. In such cases, first principles computational calculations may contribute significantly to corroborating, complementing and resolving such experimental evidence, when by itself it is difficult to interpret or it is limited in its quantity and scope. Typical examples of high-pressure experiments in materials science for geophysical applications, capable of reaching pressures of order megabars similar to those encountered at the center of planets, involve the use of experimental devices such as diamond anvil cells, or the generation of high-pressure dynamic shock waves through the impact of projectiles or the driving of very powerful pulses of laser radiation against the material target sample. This kind of experiments have proven to be very valuable in advancing our knowledge of the structure and evolution of planetary interiors such as the Earth's, since the direct probing of the state of matter deep inside the Earth is obviously not possible. Before starting to conduct such geophysical high-pressure and high-temperature laboratory experiments, it makes sense to apply them to the study of material compositions which are the most likely to be encountered inside the center of the Earth. We can infer indirectly from seismic data, such as the seismic wave velocities and the seismic anisotropy, that the Earth's core is mostly composed of iron, combined with some nickel and, in lesser amounts, some light elements like silicon, carbon, oxygen, phosphorus etc., which are dissolved in the main iron-nickel alloy. Furthermore, such seismic information is consistent with the core itself being divided into two separate shells, each with distinct mechanical behaviors, consisting in a solid inner core surrounded by a semi-liquid outer core. Hence, at the boundary between these two different layers, the local temperature must correspond to the melting temperature of iron at the pressures encountered at such depths, which corresponds to a value of about 350 gigapascals. Measuring such a high-pressure melting temperature of iron is very challenging experimentally. In order to narrow down the discrepancy between different experimental techniques for compressing matter to extreme conditions, For example, static techniques such as diamond anvil cells or alternatively dynamic compression techniques involving the propagation of shock waves, it is worth considering the usefulness of density functional theory-based ab initio computational methods for investigating and predicting the high pressure and high temperature phase diagram of crystalline iron. The basic evolution of the various crystalline phases of iron, as a function of increasing pressure and temperatures, is today relatively well understood, and has been thoroughly studied for many decades now using both experimental and computational theoretical techniques. Under ambient pressure and temperature conditions, iron exists in its well-known body-centered cubic, or BCC, crystal structure, which is also known as the alpha phase or iron. At pressures above around 10 to 15 gigapascals, iron eventually undergoes a polymorphic phase transition to its first stable high-pressure phase, which is known as the epsilon phase of iron and consists in a hexagonal closed-packed, or HCP, crystal structure. Such most stable phases of iron under different pressure conditions can easily be verified computationally via any of the standard crystal structure prediction methods, capable of structurally relaxing a crystalline system via DFT calculations performed under a certain external target pressure applied to the system. What is more challenging in ab initio simulations is to insert a thermal dimension, in order to cover the temperature axis of the phase diagram of the material under consideration in addition to the pressure dimension, since such DFT ab initio calculations are typically performed at 0 degrees Kelvin. A well-known example of a high-temperature phase of iron is its face-centered cubic, or FCC, structure. The basic pressure-temperature phase diagram of crystalline iron, comprising these three distinct phases, is summarized in the figure shown in this slide. The general consensus is that the HCP high-pressure phase of iron is the most stable structure under Earth's core conditions. However, when the thermal conditions of the core are also taken into account in addition to the high pressures, then the stability of the HCP phase becomes much more uncertain, since we approach the phase boundary region of the iron phase diagram shown previously. The situation is made even more confusing by the large discrepancy in the experimental estimates for the temperature of the core, with the most likely values in the range between 4500 and 7000 degrees Kelvin. Recently, a growing amount of both experimental and computational evidence has suggested that the BCC ambient structure might again become stable at the high pressures and high temperatures conditions found inside the Earth's core, especially when we consider iron to be more realistically alloyed with small quantities of other elements, such as the aforementioned nickel and light elements. In practice, it is likely that iron exists in a mixed phase combination of both the BCC and HCP phases simultaneously inside the core, including the presence of even more complex phases such as a double HCP, or DHCP, phase. Up to about 10% nickel presence in an iron alloy would still preserve the structure of HCP iron. However, in larger amounts, nickel, as well as probably other light alloying elements, can significantly impact the relative thermodynamic stability of the different phases of iron, as determined by the minimization of their respective free energies. With increasing amount of nickel, for instance, the BCC and then the FCC phases became actually more stable at high pressures and high temperatures conditions. Let us now present a concrete example of how DFT was employed in order to improve our understanding of the iron phase diagram. In one such landmark computational study, the melting curve of the epsilon HCP phase of iron was investigated through a combination of ab initio calculations and other thermodynamic computational techniques. From such calculations, one can in fact then obtain better estimates for the temperature of the inner core of the Earth. In practice, the melting temperature of a material as a function of pressure can be identified by identifying all those pressure temperature points of its phase diagram at which the Gibbs free energy surfaces of the solid and liquid phases of the material intersect and have therefore equal value, thus marking the point of onset of the phase transition at which the two phases are in thermodynamic equilibrium under those particular pressure temperature conditions. The calculation of the Gibbs energy for the solid phase at a certain finite temperature requires the inclusion of the vibrational entropy and energy of the crystal structure under consideration, due to the importance of the thermal phonon lattice vibrations and their contribution to the overall free energy of the material. Such vibrational properties can be readily obtained with ab initio computational methods, through such techniques as density functional perturbation theory or by measuring the response of the crystal lattice to small atomic displacements. The calculation of the free energy for the liquid phase, on the other hand, is based on the simulation of the dynamics of each atom at fixed temperature and density, using a computational method known as car-parallelo ab initio molecular dynamics. The high-pressure phase diagram of the epsilon phase of iron calculated in this computational study is displayed under the present slide. Together with a selection of experimental data, one can deduce that the computational data is overall in good agreement with the experimental one most of the time. From these calculations, it can be concluded that the temperature in the core of the Earth is at least 6,670 degrees Kelvin. This case study thus represents a clear example of how DFT ab initio methods can serve to verify or complement experimentally obtained data, and in some cases to make entirely new physical predictions that can be confirmed by experiment only later. It is also worth highlighting how this DFT computational investigation of the melting curve of the epsilon phase of iron was conducted entirely from first principles, without the use of any empirical parameters or preliminary information and knowledge. This is especially important in this case, since it ensures that the results are not biased by existing experimental information, and can provide instead an independent contribution to the furthering of our understanding of the iron phase diagram under extreme physical conditions. This brings us to the conclusion of our presentation. Many thanks for your attention, and we recommend once more to please give a try to our Materials Square online platform for executing atomistic materials and chemical computations directly on the cloud, by visiting its website at www.materialssquare.com. Please do not hesitate to contact us by email, as shown here on this slide, in case you would like to obtain further information on the various R&D services and solutions that we provide at Virtual Lab. Many thanks again for your interest and your consideration.